I'm Sherilyn Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 354 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. And today's question is, which one of these is holding you back? So as I start this episode with you today, I want to define what I mean by holding you back. And it's a topic that you've heard me talk about from lots of angles, probably, which is what is holding you back from reaching your full potential? If I really think about what I am passionate about doing through my work, it's almost always about helping women reach their full potential. Honestly, I don't even know that I would limit it to women. In like my whole life, I'm passionate about my children reaching their full potential and my friends, family members, other members of my community, like in a lot of different ways. This is a drive for me. I'm really, really interested in human potential and what we're capable of doing when we bring our full selves to really whatever game it is we're playing. And so that's why it was so interesting to me, because this past weekend, right before I'm recording this episode, I was in church listening to the main message in the church service. And interestingly, although I think this is kind of how the world works, right? I think like there's sort of a frequency you're tuned into, and then messages start landing in front of you that are really connected to that, like whatever you're paying attention to. So the message that was being delivered really was rooted in this arena. Now, they weren't necessarily talking about reaching your potential. Okay. In this particular instance, we were talking about like what really is keeping you from maybe addressing the things in your life that aren't working, from getting your needs met, right? And so there was 3P model, and y'all know how I love a good alliteration. There was a 3P model of what was keeping you, what was causing you to hold out, right, on what was possible for you. And the 3Ps that they dug into sparked my thinking. And I was like, oh, this is a good construct for a message, right? For a podcast episode. So, giving credit where credit is due, the germ of this idea came from that church service. And then I want to build on this. I've spent some time sort of journaling through this and expanding on this to think about how do some of these same things get in our way when we are trying to fulfill our potential in our work or in our communities or in our home lives. So when I think about potential, I start to think about words like purpose. And I think about that in kind of big capital P purpose, like what are we trying to do with our whole life? I also think about it in what I call lowercase p purpose. Like what is the purpose of this season? What am I all about in this season? What am I focused on in this season? But the word purpose to me is pretty inextricably tied to this idea of potential. Like if we're following through on what we think is purposeful activity, really bringing great intention to our activity in every season, I think we stand a chance of fulfilling the potential that we have. But way too often, what happens for me, for sure, and then in all likelihood, what happens for you is that we start playing small, right? We start holding back on what we actually could do, or we make some mistakes, we fall into some patterns, and those patterns hold us back without us even really knowing it's happening. So I sat down and thought about what are some of those patterns, and I have a list of 5 that I want to walk through with you in this episode. The first thing that I think keeps us from reaching our potential is procrastination. Now, in some ways, I am absolutely not a procrastinator, right? In some ways, I am like a let's get it done kind of person. And I have lists, and my lists have their own lists, and there's lots of productivity. However, really the thing that causes me to procrastinate is a lens on my perfectionism. Okay, so for me, I want the conditions to be just right. And if I don't think I can get the conditions to be just right to get the outcome that I want, I will delay and delay and delay. And then I never get out of the starting gate. So I wonder if that's relatable for you, that procrastination, either through that lens or just kind of good old fashioned procrastination, right? I just can't get myself in gear, is often something that keeps us from fulfilling our potential. If we are waiting around for the timing to be perfect, right? The moon and stars have to align. Our calendar has to clear. We have to have no pressing projects in our workload. The weather has to be just so, like, kind of everything has to be just right before we start. That breed of procrastination can really delay our ability to go do the things that would have us fulfilling our potential. So that's when I'm like personally passionate about, because I get tripped up in this all the time. Like, I'm getting ready to get started because I just know that just around the corner, there's going to be like the conditions are going to be perfect. The second thing I would call generically perfectionism. I almost called this performance. And in the service, they called this one performance. It's really the comparison game. Okay. It's we get started and then we start going, what if this isn't good enough? What if this work that I've started isn't ready to share? Maybe I should just go back to the starting line. This isn't quite there yet. I could have made this better. And by the way, that person over there, theirs looks a whole lot better. And then our inner critic goes into overdrive, right? Or our inner mean girl goes into overdrive. And before we know it, we've just kind of packed the whole thing away and said, I'm not doing this today. So whether you think of that as perfectionism or performance, I think those terms might be interchangeable in this case, but it is this comparison game of saying, I just don't think this is good enough. And if it's not good enough, then I'm going to either, maybe it's something you're writing and it just lives on your laptop and you can't get yourself to publish it, right? Maybe it is a conversation that you want to have that is going to matter. You need to go ask someone for something, like an opportunity or a promotion or a job offer or funding. And you're just not asking because you're like, this just isn't ready. They're going to say no, right? So there's so many places where this performance or maybe we call it performance-based perfectionism, like that is definitely an idea that I think can keep us from ever reaching our full potential. Like, we're not willing to try. We're not willing to put it out there. Okay, balance builders, any chance you're feeling a little overwhelmed by your overloaded schedule? I know, I've been there. In fact, it's why I created 14 Days to Calendar Control. This is my step-by-step program where I share my personal system and set of tools to help you transform your chaotic weeks into easy breezy ones. Okay, maybe not easy breezy, but at least edited and organized. Listen, there's training, templates, and tools in there to help you get things under control quickly. Say goodbye to constant conflicts and chronic rushing, and say hello to calendar control. Curious? Head to brilliant-balance.com/calendar for instant access. That's brilliant-balance.com/calendar. Now back to the show. The third factor that I see as really getting in our way is prioritization, or maybe better said, the lack of prioritization. And this is where we're doing so many things at the same time that our effort is splintered into a million different little fragments, right? We have lots of distractions and we kind of pull ourselves off course to attend to that little distraction. And every moment that we spend doing that is time that we're not spent doing the main thing, right? That whole adage about keeping the main thing is there for a reason. Because if we start to try to do all the things that cross our path, we lose the benefit of focus. We lose the benefit of really harnessing our effort in one direction. So not exercising clear prioritization is something that over time can really diminish our results, right? We get a little bit of result in a lot of places instead of having significant or substantial results in the direction that's really aligned for us. Okay, so let's review the first three. So procrastination, like not even wanting to get started because the conditions don't feel right just yet. That's a big one. Perfectionism or performance, where we're comparing ourselves and our work either to someone else or to our own standard and coming up short. And that's keeping us from sharing it. Or a lack of prioritization, where we're just doing so many things that our effort is really diluted. Those are the first three, but there's two more. And these are maybe even a little deeper in the way that they can trip us up. So the fourth one I've called pity. This is like self-pity, right? Woe is me. This is so hard. Or this is taking so long. This is going to be so much effort. Like there's so much work here to do this thing. No one is helping me. I'm just all on my own, having to do this thing all by myself. And because of that, I can't get to it. I can't get very far. And kind of this little pity party that I know I can tend to throw for myself if I am feeling overwhelmed, right? I can veer into this cycle of thinking like this, why is no one helping me? Why do I have so much to do? Why is this taking so long? And all of that energy that I am pouring into my own little pity party is energy I am not putting into doing the thing, right? And sometimes we just have to kind of put our foot down and say, it's time to do the thing. It might be difficult. It might take a long time, right? No one might be there to help you, but we're never going to get there if we don't get started. And so that one, I think, dovetails a little bit. Like it can lead to further procrastination, and it can lead to this kind of performance perfectionism cycle if we're not careful. But I think when you catch yourself having a little pity party and just feeling sorry for yourself about how difficult or arduous this thing in front of you is, how far you have to go to really reach the goal or do the thing, we want to catch that. Whenever I can catch myself in one of those cycles, it's where I maybe literally or metaphorically put my foot down and say, okay, enough. Like, stop complaining to myself. Just go do the thing. And that is often enough to get me back in gear. I kind of get this flourish of energy that I can harness into taking the next step. And the last one that I want to talk about in this episode that can get in the way of our potential if we let it is our past, right? And this is one that we talked about in that service that inspired this episode. The narrative that we have about our past can really impede our future, right? The notion that I am just not enough. Like, who am I to do a thing like this? Look at what I've done or haven't done. Look at the mistakes that I've made. Look at the failures that I've had. Look at the shortcomings that I'm bringing to the party. I'm, kind of this is the unworthy story of I just don't feel like I'm the one who can do this. In my world, we call this imposter syndrome a lot, right? Imposter syndrome is this notion of if people only knew what I'm really like on the inside, if they knew how unqualified and inexperienced or underconfident, they would never give me this opportunity. And so imposter syndrome is really a kind of lens on this. I think the whole lens of saying, I don't have the right background, I don't have the right credentials, I don't have the right education or certifications, I don't have enough money, I didn't come from the right place. Like all of that story around people like me don't get to do things like this, or people like me aren't possibly able to do things like this, or it's too late for me because I didn't start early enough. Any of those messages are really rooted in a belief that there's something about our past that is going to keep us from being able to fulfill the dreams of our future. And so my question for you as you're listening to this today is, which one of those really strikes a chord with you? Maybe there's more than one, but as I rolled through those 5, which one of them started to really resonate kind of deep in your chest? Was it the procrastination one? Was it the perfectionism around performance? Was it the lack of prioritization? Did you really resonate with the idea of feeling a sense of self-pity? Or do you think it's some narrative about your past? If you don't feel like you are reaching your potential, If you wake up every day saying, this is not where I thought I would be by now, right? And how am I going to get myself on track? I really want you to challenge yourself with, does one of these 5 things resonate with you? And if it does, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it starting today to change the narrative, to change your relationship with this particular barrier, to see if you can get some freedom, to see if you can get some forward momentum? I believe you can. I see it happen every day with the women who I get to be in two-way dialogue with, right? When I am coaching someone who is inside of a Brilliant Balance program, we see breakthroughs in these areas every day. And it's so powerful to watch when somebody gets their arms around, oh my goodness, this is the thing that has been holding me back. And I am going to figure out what I need to do to break free from this and get that forward momentum that I have been craving. And I want that for you. So this is a great invitation to take a little bit of time reflecting on what you heard in the episode today and to figure out, is there something that you can do personally, or do you need to bring in some support and some help to be able to get freedom from whichever of these is tethering you backwards, is holding you back from really reaching your full potential? Share this episode with someone who you know will benefit. I would love it if you would do that. I always consider it just a personal favor when you take my words and put them in the hands of someone who you know can benefit. So please share this episode with someone who you know needs to hear this message today. And that is all I have for you today, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.